Now that we have our entities in place, our next task is to go and take a look at our DbContext. So I'll just close all of these down and we'll focus on the DataContext class. Now what we're going to use here is, instead of DbContext, we're going to use identity DbContext. So we'll say identity, and we don't have this included with our project. We need to actually go ahead and install this. Because it's an entity framework package, then we're going to need to actually add this to it to get access to the identity DbContext. So what we'll do is we'll open up the NuGet gallery, and inside here what we want to search for is Microsoft.ASPNET Core and identity, and what we want here is the Identity Entity Framework Core package. Now because I'm recording this on a preview version of Entity Framework, I'm going to check the pre-release box. Obviously if you're using the released version of .NET 5, then you don't need to do that and you could just select the current release, but I'm going to select the API project. And because I'm on preview 8, and I started recording this on preview 8, and since then it's gone up to our release candidate, I'm going to select preview 8 just to match what I have as my runtime, and then I'm going to go ahead and install. So just make sure this matches your runtime is the only thing I would say here. So I'm just going to go and install, and this should work without issue. And then we could go ahead and close this, and we'll go back to our DataContext file. So what we should have access to then is Microsoft ASP.NET Identity Entity Framework Core, which provides us with the Identity DbContext class. Now notice we get a warning in here to say that our users table, we're attempting to override it. The Identity DbContext provides us with the tables we need to populate our database with identities. So we don't need to provide this DB set. We can now remove this. Now what we also need to do, because we want to access the user roles and we've given our entities a different key, we're going to be using ints instead of strings, then we need to go ahead and provide type parameters for this as well. So what we'll do, we'll specify the app user as one of the types and the app role as another type, and we'll give it an integer. Now if we weren't interested in dealing with roles and getting a list of roles, this would be all we'd need to do. However, because we want to get a list of the user roles, then we need to go a bit further, and we need to identify every single type, unfortunately, that we need to add to identity. We can't just specify our other class, which is our app user role. If we specify that, then we have to specify many others. So what we'll do is we'll just add the types that we need in here. So we're going to say identity user claim, and we're going to set all of these types to an int just to be consistent. And then we add our user role, or our app user role, and we don't need to specify the type because we did that in the class itself. And then we need to specify the identity user login, and once again we specify the type as int. Let's start bringing these down, so I'm going way off the screen here. And after the identity user login, we'll add identity user claim, also an int, and then we need the identity user token, and once again this is going to be an int. And let's just bring these down, and we'll need to bring in ASP.NET Core identity as well for this, and we should get almost a clean bill of health. We've got one problem, and let's take a look. And what this is complaining about is we're missing a type in here, but I've got two identity user claims, and this third one should be identity role claim. Now it's a bit of a pain to do this, I appreciate that, and if I did have a better way of identifying the app user role inside here, then I would have used it. If we specify this one, then we need to identify all of the different types, but it does give us an opportunity to ensure they're using integers just like we're using for the other IDs inside here. Now I'm going to go down because we need to configure our relationship between our app user to our app role and the many-to-many table, the join table that we created as well. So what we'll do is we'll just add some configuration in here for that. So what we need here, we need to say builder, and we'll say .entity, and then we can say app user, and then we need to say has many, and we'll say UR goes to UR.userRoles, and then we can say with one, and we'll say U goes to U.user, and we'll say has foreign key, and we'll say UR goes to UR.userID, and then we'll say is required. And we just need to configure the other side of this relationship as well. So I'm just going to copy this line down and paste it in. And instead of app user, this is going to be app role. And we're going to say with many user roles, with one role in this case, and with foreign key is going to be the role ID. And we'll keep the is required as well. So this is what we need in place for our data context now. We inherit from identity DbContext and give it all of its types. We remove the DB set for user because that's provided by identity DbContext. And then we configure the relationship between the app user and our user roles, as well as the relationship between the app role and our user roles. So what we'll take a look at next is what we need to do to configure identity in our application inside our service extensions. And we'll take a look at that next.